great to be with you today. I'm Becky Ingamells and I work for Tearfund. I'm sure in this room many of you have heard of Tearfund, but just a really quick recap. We're a charity that's been going for over 60 years with a real calling really to global poverty and seeing poverty alleviation. And one of the real jewels in the crown of Tearfund is actually its long-term poverty alleviation. And it's hard to see people empowered out of poverty. Before I came to Tearfund, I've been working in development now for probably about 7+ years. Before that, I was a church pastor. And when I came into Tearfund and started really understanding how it did asset-based community development through the church, I was really excited, and I just really began to see how learnings from the Global South could be so powerful for the UK church. And when I started working for Tearfund, I saw a video, which Joy, I'm going to bring Joy up in a minute, from a live church, this church here, talking about some learnings from Tearfund. And I was so excited by that I sent it around to loads of church leaders, including some people probably in this room, because I just felt there was such gold in learning from Tearfund and learning from the Global South in how we approach our own social action as churches. And over those 60 years, I think Tearfund has done a lot of learning on many things, but it's really learnt a lot about how to do community transformation well and really move away from that idea that the Western church is there to save the Global South and just swoop in and fix everything, and really a move to how do we empower people? How do we really bring out people's skills and dignity and that they're called and made in the image of God. So Tearfund does that amazingly globally. We work in around 50 countries, 50 of the most poorest countries in the world. And the things that we see again and again and again is transformation through the church. So we really believe at Tearfund that the local church is at the centre of God's vision for transforming the world. And we believe that the church globally and in the UK is best placed in its community to bring the kingdom in and see transformation wherever it's based. We think that God's plan is really brilliant. That's not to say that church doesn't struggle and doesn't have its imperfections, but we see again and again in very complex places of conflict and extreme poverty, again and again we see churches transforming those communities and transforming people's lives. One of the ways this really happens is actually through Bible studies. So we really start with almost basic discipleship of rooting things in the Word of God. And I was just reading some things on the way up here about how people were saying that they used to have Bible teaching that was very about spiritual change, which is fantastic. But actually, when we do a lot of this facilitation work, we really bridge the gap between it's not just about spiritual transformation, it's also about practical transformation of our skills and lives. So we often start with really changing mindsets. And we often work with people that have felt like they're stuck in poverty forever, but then they begin to realise that actually God has got a plan for them, God has got a purpose for them, that they are image carriers. So we think that this mindset change and discipleship is fundamental to seeing transformation. And often what we see is people's lives transformed, people finding more of God, community, fellowship, love, and often they're supported in starting businesses. So transformation becomes very holistic, not just about income, but actually about their self-esteem, their dignity, and their confidence. I'm just going to tell you one little story, and then I'm going to ask Joy to come up and just share a little bit about their journey as a church. I had the great privilege earlier this year of travelling out to Rwanda. I've been working for Tearfund for a number of years, but I've struggled to go and see much of the work because of COVID. But I finally this year went out to Rwanda, and I met a number of churches there and a number of pastors there. And one pastor I met called Ephraim was saying that he had a church of about 300 people. But actually, as he started this process, which we call church and community transformation, not only was there transformation in individuals, but the church grew from 300 people to 700 people, where actually there was growth in individuals. And then people started saying, what's happened to you? And they started coming into the church. And one of the things as well, I get a lot of reports that come through my desk at Tearfund. And one of the things that often strikes me is sometimes we record how churches grow in number and financially because people are being empowered out of poverty, and actually tithes start coming into the church more. So we see this again and again, this growth in church size, but that actually represents spiritual transformation and holistic transformation as well. Joy, do you mind coming up and just asking you a few questions? Because I know that as a church, you've gone on kind of a journey with Tearfund and with community development. So, I was really excited before I met Joy. I heard her being interviewed. We interviewed her at Tearfund. And so you're probably a bit of a celebrity because I send the video to so many people around the country. But I just wanted to ask you a few questions because I think that really helps set the context for this day, because a lot of the journey for this church started with some of your partnership with Tearfund. So in the very beginning, why did you as a church think that you wanted to partner with Tearfund?
Yeah, well, I probably need to just go back a little bit before that. We started probably with what Simon described as the dream and then the deliver. So we were like, let's do something to impact our community, and we'll invite refugees to come and have a meal because we want to offer hospitality. And we didn't even know if there were really any refugees in the city and whether they would want that. So we were doing things to people, not with them. And we invited on a night, and two guys came. They were both from Angola. They were from warring tribes in Angola, so they didn't want to talk to each other. So it was in this room. One sat here and the other sat on another table, and we were really awkward and didn't really know what to say. And we called the evening amigos, because in Portuguese that means friendship, and we were like, we want to build friendship with people. And the next week, the Lincoln City Council moved refugees from Lincoln to Glasgow, so we had no refugees. So there was no design element in what we were doing. And a load of homeless people rocked up to the meal, and we began serving homeless people. And we were doing that for about 7 years. But probably around, we'd have 90 different people come through this room here. We'd serve them food, and the only changes that would happen in their lives were if they would sadly die, or they maybe move to a different city. And we realised other churches in the city were also serving the same people. And there was a Polish community who were living in a tent community by the river, and they had alcohol problems, and they would lose their work permits on a regular basis. And so we were paying for them to go to London, to the embassy, to get their stuff sorted, and then another church would pay for them to go again when they lost it again. And what we realised was we weren't helping them, we were actually making things worse. And so when we were introduced to the work of Tearfund, we recognised the integrated approach to mission that Tearfund were doing, and recognising that when brokenness exhibits not just, and poverty exhibits not just in a lack of things, but in a breakdown of relationships, and breakdown of self-esteem, and breakdown of connection with God. And we saw the way that Tearfund empowered the local community to be part of the solution, and in the places where the need was greatest. So we were thinking Lincoln's, got some problems, but I went to Cambodia and I saw some incredible sad need and some joyous, hopeful solutions. And so we were like, we want to be part of this.
Excellent, brilliant. And so when you partnered with us in Cambodia, and you went, didn't you, yourself, what learnings did you pick up from the work there that you could bring back to Lincoln and the community transformation going on in Lincoln?
Yeah, so the biggest thing that stood out to me was we went to Cambodia as the post-Khmer Rouge genocide, and so a whole generation was wiped out. So fatherless and motherless generation, and sex trafficking from the rural communities into Phnom Penh was huge. And 1 in 3 of the prostitutes in the brothels in Phnom Penh were children, and they'd been sold by their parents in villages to go and be in this prostitution. And I was really shocked when we drove through the streets of Phnom Penh and saw Western men go in there to take part in this industry. And the thing that we'd been partnering with some organisations that were stopping trafficking or like rescuing young women and girls and boys from from prostitution, but the flow never stopped. And so there were more being rescued and then more being kind of trafficked in. And so the thing that we learned and saw, which was just incredible, was the local church in local rural communities where parents, not because they wanted to sell their children, but because they were in such material poverty and they didn't know what they were doing. So they were selling their children because they were told that their children were going to a better life. And they were like, I can't feed everyone, so let's send this one to a better life. And then they were empowered through these small groups to understand who they were, made in the image of a creative God. And so you've got creative solutions at your fingertips. And so let's dream about what we could do to stop this. And they started educating each other about this trafficking situation and then pooling their money, so living on less than $2 a day, and yet still being able to pool their money together to finance one another and to set up micro businesses to help them get out of poverty. And the projects that we partnered with saw the villagers saw a complete eradication of trafficking to Phnom Penh, to the cities, because of the education and the mobilisation and the empowerment of the local church. It was just incredible. So the thing that I brought back was, let's stop looking at the symptoms of the need and start looking at some of the deep reasons that there's poverty in our city. And let's work together to think really carefully about how we can design projects that don't just jump in with 2 feet and then disappoint people or when we get bored. But let's think about a long-term commitment to a community that means it's hard work and we go really slow, but we then create solutions together that are transformative. And if it can happen in rural communities in Cambodia where they draw from the creativity of a creative God, then we can do it in Lincoln. And the best thing for me was we're learning from them, and it's not like the Western church saying we've got all the solutions. They helped us, which was amazing.
Brilliant, thank you, that's so powerful. Thanks for sharing that. Give her a clap. I haven't really got much to add to that, apart from, as Tearfund, we just think it's so exciting that the UK church are wanting to learn more about how to think about transformation of their own communities and go on those long journeys. And as we say, we believe that the church, it's been a tough time for churches, I know, because I talk to church leaders all across the UK. I know it's not been an easy season, but yet still the church is a beacon of light and God's plan and purpose for transformation of our towns, our cities, our nations and the world. And I just think that this material is so good for you as churches to equip you and help you learn about that process. So thank you.